Pharmaceutical, meaning Ireland would get half of the 600,000 doses expected by the end of March. The European Commission says it regrets there was no breakthrough at tonight's meeting. It's asked AstraZeneca for a clear plan for the fast delivery of the jab that are due by the end of March. In other news, investigations are continuing into the fatal stabbing of a 16-year-old talented footballer in Dublin's north inner city. Josh Dunn was stabbed to death and another 16-year-old boy seriously injured in Eastwall last night. Local councillor Neil Ring is asking anyone with information to come forward.
People who were around here may have seen something, and particularly as the Garda said, dash cam from passing taxis. This is a very busy road.
And Bridgerton has become the biggest ever original series on Netflix after it was viewed by a record 82 million households in 2018. In 28 days, The period drama about Regency London's also entered the top 10 in the popularity ranks in every country except Japan. It was renewed for a second series last week. It's 9:02.
News Talk Weather.
Thanks to the AA, you can find our best discounts on car insurance online. Go to the aa.ie.
Rain tonight. It'll be heavy and possibly thundery in northern parts with a risk of spot flooding. Becoming drier though elsewhere overnight. Lows of 7 to 10 degrees. And now you're up to date on News Talk.
The Football Show on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power. New normal, same old football. Paddy Power. Gamble responsibly. Gamblingcare.ie.
I'm prepared to do anything I can to play for my country again.
Do it then. What about your start to the game?
It wasn't bad, was it?
Why should an honest answer be a mistake?
How can a modern day manager not have a mobile phone?
Why should he?
Now you're welcome along. So busy football show for you. Miguel Delaney is going to join us later on. I should tell you, Manchester United about to go in at the break at Old Trafford. 1-0 down to Sheffield United. David De Gea made a bit of a mess of a corner. And bottom of the table, Sheffield United took advantage. So they are 1-0 up at Old Trafford. Man United have come back to win 24 points from losing positions this season thus far, which is an outrageous record. So Liverpool are next on 10 points to United's 24 from losing positions. They are making a habit of this. So 1-0 down, 45 minutes to play against bottom of the table Sheffield United. As for the other game this evening, James has put Everton 1-0 up against Leicester. That would, by the way, put Everton into fourth, or certainly joint fourth with West Ham, and Leicester sit in third. So here we are in 2021, and 3 of the top 5 would be Leicester, Everton and West Ham, which is just a bit mad. Now let's go to South America and Rio and Tim Vickery. Evening.
Yeah, talking of Rio, I'm just watching the cable cars go up and down to Sugarloaf Mountain, which is a very, very Rio sight. I'm also thinking that in exactly 3 days' time, we will be just coming out for the second half of the final of the Copa Libertadores, all Brazilian affair here in Rio between Palmeiras and Santos. And those players are going to fry, in the immortal words of Alan Hansen in the film Bend It Like Beckham. It is going to be hot, hot, hot.
Are we looking forward to this then? I wasn't primarily going to talk to you about that, but tell me. I mean, all Brazilian affair. Will there be crowds?
No fans. Well done, actually, to Brazil's football authorities, because the lunatics running this asylum have given the green light for 30% of stadium capacity for league games and so on. But the people running the show, to their credit, have not indulged in that delirium that the Premier League was doing, 5 or 6 weeks ago, when they put, we'll have 2,000 in. Doesn't look like a very good idea in retrospect, does it? No no fans. But still, I'm a little bit worried about the temperature, actually, because, it's 5 o'clock our time, 8 o'clock Saturday night, your time kickoff. And this idea originally was for a final in late November, which is kind of late spring, instead of which, because of the pandemic, end of January, high summer. So I'm a little bit worried at the effect that heat is going to have on the spectacle. And also just because there have been so many games. I mean, Palmeiras, for them, it's game 55 since late July. Just over 6 months, 55 games. Now, admittedly, they've been able to rotate their squad a little bit, but it's still a lot of football. I'm ever the optimist. I'm hopeful we're going to get a good spectacle. but I'm fearful that heat and fatigue might make it more cautious than it would have been otherwise.
Okay, so this is Palmeiras against Santos in the Copa Libertadores final, the Champions League equivalent in South America. It's on BBC, certainly, so people over here, if you want to watch this game and get a sample of where South American League football is at, then this might be the game to watch. I'm sorry, I now understand you on a deeper level. When you had said hot, 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 I had just thought you meant, the pressure cooker atmosphere of a final, as opposed to literally the sun will be out.
Yeah, I'm not capable of metaphor. That was as bad as it's literal. It's hot. I'm sitting here in the shade with sweat running down the back of my shirt. Imagine if I was in the full glare of the sunshine running around.
What's hot over there in Celsius degrees?
It's around 34 at the moment, and the temperature is the same for Saturday. You might remember, I don't know if you're too young for this, but you might remember it's exactly 21 years ago now that Man United were over here at this time of the year.
Yeah. Famously, they couldn't even go for a jog.
You remember it well, yes. And their games were kicking off this sort of time, and they really suffered first half. Come the second half, there's more shade in the stadium, but first half they really found those first halves difficult. Now, obviously, the players on Saturday will be more used to the weather conditions, but quite often extreme heat means caution, so that's a fear that I have for this game.
Okay, I think that just turned into a glorified Manchester United holiday with volleyball on the beach and all that kind of stuff. Were you in Brazil at that stage?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I was in the stadium for that, and remember thinking just beforehand, because Christmas over here follows very much a kind of European pattern. People have their trees, and and the poor old Father Christmases, they got to dress up in the same gear that they dress up. It's 40 degrees out there, and it allowed me to use a line many times that I'd never seen. That the only people ever sweating to this extent in red and white were Father Christmases and Manchester United.
Hey, very good. It's funny, you've raised an interesting point there. I never thought about Santa's attire and how it might differ, across the country. It's an interesting point. So I'm sort of afraid to ask then, the COVID situation generally over there, given the lunatics running your particular asylum, how is it?
Not good. Not good at all. We're about to go over 220,000 deaths. President Bolsonaro on March the 22nd, let that day live in infamy. He said that the death toll would not exceed 800.
Yeah.
It's exceeded 220,000, and his analysis seems to be exactly the same. Just like all of those lunatics back on your side of the Atlantic who said, no, there'll be no second wave. There's not going to be any second wave. And when there is a second wave, they admit that there is a second wave, but that their analysis stays exactly the same. Usually if the facts change, your analysis should change. If not, that way madness lies. And unfortunately over here, not only madness, but deaths as well. The city of Manaus up in the Amazon has been really suffering, and it ran out of oxygen about 10 days ago. So there were people dying, people dying not of COVID, but simply of asphyxia, not being able to breathe because there was not enough oxygen. So that's a gross mismanagement. It's starting to have political consequences, and of the right-wing coalition that elected Bolsonaro. Some of the right wing are breaking away, and some of them were doing a kind of demonstration against him in cars on Sunday. So his political base is becoming smaller, but it's still powerful, and it still includes so many of law enforcement. If we extrapolate what happened in the United States to Brazil, the a kind of pro-Bolsonaro demonstrators would receive more support, I think, from police than even was the case with the pro-Trump rioters in the States. So I'm still worried for how we're going to get out of this situation.
Yeah, that's desperate. I hadn't realised it was that serious. And I will segue back into football in a second, but just on Bolsonaro, because he does seem so patently mad and terrible, at every juncture along the way. What is his unique selling point? If you had to boil it down to the attraction of Bolsonaro for many across Brazil, what would it be?
Well, I suppose a lot of it was anti-corruption, although he's lost some of his anti-corruption parts of his government. But also some of it is, is very banality. he does remind me of at the Brazilian family gathering, the uncle, cracking these dreadful jokes, and everyone trying to get away from him. But there is a kind of relatability there. Part of it is kind of cultural wars type thing. It's a very strange right-wing populism, because there has been almost no economic populism in this at all. The original program, it's been blown off course a little bit by the pandemic, is like privatize everything and make everyone's jobs more precarious. There's not a lot there for the poor. Crack down on crime and violence and a kind of shoot on sight policy with the bad guys. That has gone down very well. That kind of rhetoric goes down very well. And one of the fears that I've got is that so many people have travelled so far along with him that it's almost like they can't get off the bus without admitting to some kind of complicity in the fact that 220,000 people have died. So again, I keep thinking, how are we going to get out of this situation? What's the way out? And I'm not sure what it is.
Okay. Well, with that rather grim backdrop, is there anything you'd like to tell people as they prepare maybe to sit down in the middle of the night to watch the Santos Palmeiras final at the weekend?
Well, if you're sitting down in the middle of the night, you've already missed it, because it's 8 o'clock in the evening.
Oh,
your
brilliant.
Time.
Okay, well, I'll actually watch this thing then. Right, so come here, what do I need to know?
Well, see, this is the point of the one-off final on a neutral ground. We used to have home and away finals, and they would kick off your time. It will be after midnight.
Yeah.
Over 2 legs. It's not going to happen for a European audience. Even though it's one game, they can get much more money from the sale of TV rights, because it's attractive for a European audience. And an audience, it's a good time zone for many zones around the world. The downside, although that doesn't apply at the moment because there are no supporters, is that you're pricing lots of the fans out of the game. South America is vast, travel is expensive, wealth is not well distributed. So a lot of the supporters are just simply unable to go to a one-off final in a neutral ground. It just so happens that this is a final between 2 Brazilian clubs in Brazil, and it's not that far away. So that's the downside. There are pros and cons. I actually so far, I've enjoyed it. We've only just had this for a couple of years, but I've enjoyed the sense of occasion of a one-off final. Palmeiras are the wealthy historical team of the Italian community in the city of São Paulo. So they're a giant team from the biggest city in South America. Santos is an extraordinary club. When the population of Santos is the port, about an hour's drive, if you're lucky with the traffic, down the hill from São Paulo. The population is less than 500,000, it's about 450,000. So for Santos over the years to consistently outperform Palmeiras, Corinthians and São Paulo, it's a bit like Brighton outperforming Arsenal, Tottenham, West Ham and Chelsea. They're an extraordinary club. There's no other club in Brazil like them. All the big clubs in Brazil come from the big state capitals, with the exception of Santos. They're broke. They can't sign players. They've been banned from FIFA from signing players. So they've had to throw the youth in, which is, it's been a fantastic story. No one expected Santos to get this far. They impeached their president a couple of months ago because of the financial situation. They've been, I think there's unpaid salaries and so on. Vital centre-back Lucas Verissimo is joining Benfica in Portugal straight after the game. They had to kind of almost force him out to play in the semi-finals because he'd been promised a move and the club was stalling on it. So Santos getting into the final is a great story. Yeah. And another thing you can happily do is talent spot. If you look at Santos, the centre forward, Caio Jorge, teenager, he's clearly on his way to Europe, and there's a little bit of Firmino of Liverpool about him, so he's one to watch, as is the little Venezuelan, Soteldo, little winger. Probably the best dribbler in Brazilian football at the moment. Only 23, so he's still got time for a European move. For Palmeiras, he may not start, but I'm sure he'll play at some point. Gabriel Veron, only 18. He's been linked with Man United, and he's on the radar screen of every big club. He's a flying winger, but he's not just pace. He can do it in reduced space as well. They've got a big left-footed central midfielder who I think has a future, Patrick de Paula. So that there's plenty of talent spotting you can do here. And you get this thing of Santos bringing down the Giants. Again, if Santos win, they become the first Brazilian club to win the Libertadores 4 times. Now, just think of that. They're from a relatively small city by Brazilian standards, and they will be the most decorated Brazilian club in terms of this continental title. It's a massive achievement. And the Maracanã, it's the closest that Brazil has to a kind of national stadium. And in the days of Pelé, Santos would play some of their really big games in the Maracanã. It's a few hundred miles from the city of Santos, but they were such a national institution that everyone wanted to see them. So the ghosts of Santos past will be in the stadium as well. Hopefully I've sold it to you now, and I can't think of many better things you've got to do. 8 o'clock in the evening in the middle of a pandemic in Dublin.
Sold. I think Arsenal United's on Saturday as well, so I'll segue from that into BBC. It's suddenly coming back to me now. Was it last year, the year before? There was a Tim Vickery package ahead of this match. You were on prime time. Are you doing that again this time around?
Well, something like that. Yeah, we're still sorting out what it's going to be. But if the BBC can find a way to make my nose fit on the screen, there may be something like that happening again.
Well, listen, doubly sold if we get some Vickery on prime time. I mean, the listeners are already frothing. So that's this weekend. I did want to talk to you about Cavani, if that's okay. I don't know. I mean, if your Cavani knowledge isn't in depth, that's no problem. But 5 goals in 17 games for United, only 7 starts. Guess what everybody's saying about him? So here's the menu. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. His movement is incredible. It's just for everyone to learn from. Pogba, talking about Cavani. We do have talented players. They don't have the same quality of Eddie, though, as well. He's always there at the right time, the right moment to help the team win. Mason Greenwood. Twofold points here from Greenwood. He says, interestingly, the stuff he does, the way he dresses himself is what Greenwood is very taken with. The way he trains, the way he does everything right as a footballer, really. He reminds me of Juan Mata, maybe Matic, 2 great professionals. But then, of course, Greenwood on Cavani's best attribute. For me, it's the movement. I've never seen a striker do as many movements. He does probably the same movement about 6 or 7 times a game, like the one against Southampton, that header. He does that every day in training. He scored 2 from doing the exact same thing. And on it goes. I've got to say, I've seen Cavani play live. I was at the World Cup in 14 and we've seen our Champions League. I didn't, and I'm probably like a lot of people who predominantly watch Premier League, I didn't realise how clever this guy was, how crafty he was. I love watching him.
And also, just the mad work rate. I was kind of there at the start. It's exactly 14 years ago. South America's under 20 championships, start of 2007 in Paraguay. And I wrote he was one of the players that I picked out from that tournament for World Soccer Magazine. And the thing that was just amazing about him is, I mean, that's a tough tournament. You're playing it in intense summer heat, and there are 9 games in 3 weeks. And in the closing minutes of the final game, he's still chasing all the way back into his own half to close down opponents. And the word that I used to describe him then, and I think it's still true now, he's the world's first box-to-box striker. He's an extraordinary player. It annoyed me a little bit when United were lining him up to the disrespect with which some in England were treating him. He's been a genuinely world-class performer for a long time, and with a degree of sacrifice to the team, which is amazing. I mean, with Uruguay, he was originally, you go back to say 2010, and at the start of 14 as well, he was third lick behind Suarez and Forlan. So they needed in that the system, they often played 4-4-2. They needed him to go and play on the wing. Yeah. He went and played on the wing, and he did it, and never complained. That the coach at Uruguay, Oscar Washington Tabárez, he calls him the perfect son-in-law, because his willingness to do what is necessary, but obviously what he wants to do is to be an old-time centre forward. And it's a type of player, perhaps, Joe, that United didn't quite have. They've got lots of pace on the counter-attack, but someone with the old arts of a centre forward is something I think that they've been missing. In fact, there aren't that many of them around in football these days, are there? The old style centre forwards. So it hasn't surprised me at all that he's been so successful because of his ability, his willingness to do the hard yards, and the fact that he just completes their blend a little bit. He gives them something that they didn't really have.
Yeah, for sure. They've started with Martial this evening up front, and he's missed. They need him almost to lead the line at times. I suspect he'll be on soon. Before you go, so you were writing about Carlos Tevez, very interesting piece for, I think it was The Sun recently. So Boca Juniors is where Tevez is these days. His next birthday is his 37th. This may be the end of the line for him. I know they won the Argentinian League, and that was a great achievement, and Tevez was very much a part of that. But then they were beaten in the Copa Libertadores, obviously, given that he's not in the final. This may be the end for Tevez, we think. You were writing some interesting things about him and Maradona, and I think his father as well. Tevez is struggling with COVID.
Well, it looks like it's all over for him,
right.
For his father. So it's been tough times for Tevez with that, and also with the loss of Maradona, who the two of them were very, very close indeed, really close. They shared a bond. Born on the wrong side of the tracks, Boca fanatics, same kind of squat build and so on. In fact, if we can go back to Maradona briefly and his spell in charge of Argentina, I don't think he did that bad a job getting them over the line, getting them qualified for that World Cup in South Africa. Tevez was out of the side. He'd lost his place in the side. He'd had a nightmare in qualification. But come the World Cup, I think Maradona had said to Tevez, get yourself fit. And he just couldn't resist it. He couldn't leave Tevez out. He had to find a place for Tevez. And I think, and I argued this at the time, I think that was the undoing of the side. It unbalanced the side. They played Germany in a real high intensity friendly. I know friendly schmendly and all that, but a real high intensity friendly in the March before the World Cup in Germany, and they won 1-0. And the Germans had one shot on target, and so many of their crosses, free set pieces and so on, Veron at the near post was heading away. Come the World Cup, during the course of the World Cup, Maradona just can't resist it. He gets carried away with his own rhetoric about we're going to revolutionise football with a new attacking lineup, and he finds a place for Tevez. He loses Veron, and it totally unbalanced the side that were just thrashed by Germany. I remember the first goal right at the start. It was a set piece exactly in the space where Veron was heading balls away. He wasn't there anymore, and Messi ended up was having to fetch and carry for Tevez, which is a dramatic reversal of what the pecking order should have been like. So, but part of it was just like Maradona, that bond he had with Tevez was so strong, you just couldn't leave him out. So when Tevez was desperate to win the Libertadores to honour the memory of Maradona, first game after the death of Maradona, Tevez scored the only goal, took off his number 10 Boca Juniors shirt to reveal another number 10 Boca Juniors shirt. It was one worn by Maradona in 1981. And Maradona had given it to Tevez, who had it framed in his house. He had to break the frame in order to get the shirt and go and wear it. That's one of the happiest yellow cards I think he ever picked up in his career. But he was a disconsolate figure when Boca got knocked out. He's saying that he's going to play on.
Okay.
He's also... We will see how long that one goes. But he's also talking about one day being president of Boca Juniors. And so with this, the club president being an elected position, there's all kinds of intrigue amongst the candidates in a club with the political, the social importance of Boca. And his photo has been taken on holiday with one of the candidates. So that's a big story in Argentina at the moment. Is he getting involved in the political intrigue? But it doesn't look like he's going to hang up his boots just yet. Although I wonder, when he comes back after training, he'll be 37. Will he simply be able to put his body through the whole thing again? It wouldn't surprise me if he chucks it up this year, even if it's next month. He's all right. I'm not going to do this anymore. It wouldn't surprise me. But I suppose he thinks he's still got unfinished business, and maybe he wants one more tilt at the Libertadores. He kind of made his name winning the tournament with Boca back in 2003, and it was a lovely idea to kind of bookend the whole thing with another win in 2020. Well, maybe he'll have another dart at 2021, but whatever happens, we ain't going to see him on the football field for that much longer.
Okay. On his day, he was phenomenal, and obviously part of that Rooney-Ronaldo line was ridiculously good. Kind of an odd, not an odd character, but it was hard to get a feel for him because he seemed like an unbelievably good professional on the pitch, but then seemed to get in spats here and there. And then there was like the hilarious Ferguson sign he held up when he was with Man City, and you're thinking, I wouldn't be doing that, Carlos. And then was like just hanging out with Patrice Evra and Ji-Sung Park all the time, even though I don't think any of them spoke the same language. And, you know, pops up in China for a while to get 12 million quid a year. It was hard to get a feel for Tevez, the person.
Well, I think the thing with him is, remember, and you missed out his golfing leave in Argentina when he abandoned the whole thing and went back to Argentina to play golf. I think he needs to be the main man.
Okay.
I think he must be that. He thrives on that, and he sulks a little bit if he isn't. If we go back to 2018, I'll get the years mixed up now. 2019, I've had too many of them, obviously. We go back to 2019. He was on the bench at Boca, and he wasn't even the first attacking option off the bench, and you thought it was all over for him. And then last year, new coach came in, and he said to him, look, it's you and 10 others. You are going to be the main man. You are going to be the... And he responded really, really well. He loved that. That is why, for me, that's one of the reasons I think that his Argentina career is such a disaster. I mean, if you look at his record for Argentina, it's not even mediocre. It's downright poor, and it's something like 12 goals in 70 games. I mean, it's awful. You know, it wouldn't be that good for a midfielder, but for someone who saw himself as a centre forward, I often think I don't think there's necessarily a personal thing between them, but the rise of Messi was a problem for him. You know, because if you go back pre-Messi, say 2003, 2004, the idea was that Tevez was the coming man. And then along comes Messi and steals his thunder a little bit. You know, there's no doubt of the two, which is better. And I don't think he could ever quite find his place. He didn't want to be it was hard for him, I think, psychologically to be a second fiddle. And most of his time in Europe, he was a support cast player, wasn't he? He wasn't the main man. He had that one glory season right at the end at Juventus. And then once he'd done that for one season, he went back home. It was almost as if, I proved that now. I don't want to do that anymore. It was almost as if a kind of feeling of maybe I'm not good enough to do it again. I wondered. If I go back home, at least I can have that kind of main man status, because he does clearly thrive on it. And that's one reason that I think he might suddenly chuck it up, because if he thinks that he's now just not quick enough anymore, he's not athletically good enough to be that main man, it wouldn't surprise me if he then thinks, why bother with this?
Okay, very good. Edinson Cavani is warming up as we speak. 54 minutes on the clock. Manchester United still 1-0 down to Sheffield United. Tim Vickery, pleasure as always. Thanks so much, Tim. Cheers.
It was mine. Cheers.
Football on Off the Ball
with Paddy Power. New normal, same old football. Paddy Power. Gamble responsibly. Gamblingcare.ie.
Do you think you've got what it takes to become one of the next Aldi Ireland suppliers? Well, Grow with Aldi is back for 2021, and the Pat Kenny Show will be showcasing some of the best small and medium food and drink suppliers that Ireland has to offer. Not only will you benefit from the Grow with Aldi Supplier Development Programme, but you'll also have the chance to get your product on the shelves of 145 Aldi stores nationwide. Enter by Friday, February the 5th at newstalk.com/growwithaldi, and tune into the Pat Kenny Show weekday mornings from 9 on Newstalk for more details.
Grow with Aldi, proudly supported by Newstalk.
Psychology, performance analysis, sports therapy and coaching all contribute to elite performance in sport. At Portobello Institute, we offer full-time and blended learning honours degrees in each of these sporting disciplines. Affordable and accessible online study, small group lectures and practicals are now enrolling at Portobello Institute. So talk to an expert about our full-time and blended learning sports degree courses at our virtual open sessions. Visit portobelloinstitute.com for details.
At Electric Ireland, we believe that we're at our brightest when we shine together. That's why we're making a promise to every customer and business that your lights will stay on this winter, no matter what, regardless of your financial circumstances. If you're experiencing difficulties paying your bill or have any questions or worries at all, please call us on 1800 50 40 21. We're here to help, because we're brighter together.
At Bank of Ireland, you don't have to talk face-to-face. Our mortgage team are happy to talk FaceTime to FaceTime and give you all the info you need. From how to get started to how much to save. FaceTime our mortgage team to talk about a personalised mortgage that's right for you. When you're ready to make a move, we're ready to make it with you. Bank of Ireland. Begin. Lending criteria, terms and conditions apply. Over 18s only. Mortgage approval subject to assessment of suitability and affordability. Bank of Ireland Mortgage Bank trading as Bank of Ireland Mortgages is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power. Minimal contact in stadiums shouldn't stop the usual suspects from going down. Gamble responsibly. Gamblingcare.ie.
Oh, welcome back. Dave McGoldrick, are you onside? Are you onside? Oh, it doesn't matter. You've blasted over anyway. McGoldrick. Sheffield United 1-0 up away to Manchester United. I don't think he was onside. Not that he knew. Yeah, Harry Maguire stepped up, played him offside. But it's gone from being inconvenient, I think, going 1-0 down to the bottom club in the Premier League to now slightly worrying for Manchester United as they head towards the hour mark. So it's Sheffield United 1, Manchester United 0. In the other game, James has Everton 1-0 up at home to Leicester, also about an hour gone in that game. Very happy to say, though, Miguel Delaney of the London Independent joins us at Stamford Bridge this evening. Miguel, how you doing?
Not too bad. Just back, actually. So I've just got the United game on now. I've missed most of it.
Well, yeah, it's a strange kind of a game. Solskjaer's obviously made some changes in the hope of resting some players. The games are coming thick and fast. And, you know, it's one of those games where with each passing minute, Sheffield United are feeling a bit more, oh, we're kind of in this, and there's a bit more pep in their step. And it can get difficult, obviously, for the bigger team when that happens. So somewhere right now, Frank Lampard's sitting back saying, you know what, stuffed a lot of them, delighted.
Well, I mean, I suppose it wasn't quite that bad. And you could, I mean, as I wrote in my own match report tonight, it represented, I mean, the kind of dullness of the game. I mean, I've been watching this United game for 5 minutes and there's been more action in this than there was in the entire 90 at Chelsea. But that kind of almost dull solidity still represented a step up from, let's be honest, the farce that had inflicted Chelsea over the last few games. I mean, that's how bad it was getting under Lampard. So maybe he shouldn't be sitting back too comfortably in that regard. But, I mean, I think anyone with even a passing interest in, or not passing knowledge of Tuchel would know that he's generally renowned for kind of, I suppose, exemplifying or being a kind of a archetype, of this kind of modern German style, high pressing, very fast. And maybe inevitably we didn't see much of that tonight at Stamford Bridge, but you did get a sense at least, and like this is something like someone connected to the club was talking about before the game. The players were given specific tactical instructions. That was very, very evident in terms of where to move, and there was a bit more of idea about what he wanted, even if obviously it couldn't be executed too quickly because he's only had a day with the team. And that as well marks a real step up from Lampard, where, I mean, what I'd been told on Monday was, you know, that senior players and new signings were often baffled by instructions, and there certainly wasn't anything as rigorous as what Tuchel will want. But then, you know, as is often the case at Chelsea, you'd wonder whether Tuchel will be too far the other direction.
Oh, don't worry, they'll be moaning soon enough. We're not in the habit generally of playing Thomas Tuchel down the years, so just to give you a sense of his interview post-match, listener, here is Thomas Tuchel speaking to BN Sport, and he said he was reasonably happy with the opening 90 minutes of his Chelsea tenure.
I'm very happy with the performance. We played with excellent energy, high up the pitch, and good intensity. Many ball recoveries in the last third, a lot of ball possession, but a lot of intensity, many half chances, created a lot of good opportunities in the second half, and were simply unlucky. So I will not allow to be anybody frustrated, because it was a good performance. We did not allow counterattacks. We closed the space. I'm very happy with the energy and the attitude, and we will continue from now on.
Of course, it's an early stage. You had only one session with the players yesterday, but what was your key message for the players tonight?
We did tactical stuff. We showed them where to attack, where we want to accelerate the game, where we want to close the spaces for counter-attack. So it was a very detailed session, and was a tactical session, and also against the ball. What I saw today in terms of attacking and defending was very high level. I'm very happy, and this league demands the full intensity, and we gave everything out there on the pitch with a lot of quality. It's very hard to be the dominant team. The pitch is in not the best condition, it's slippery, it's hard. So with a little bit of luck, we win. We deserve to win, but we will work for it to deserve it more.
That's very interesting, because actually of late, I mean, he used the phrase there, energy and attitude. They were two of the things Lampard was bemoaning most regularly, you know, character and work rate. I think even, you know, the Sunday Times front page at the weekend went with Lampard, we need to run more. So it's going to be interesting to see if this level that Tuchel wants continues. Now, maybe the argument might be, well, if they've got clear direction, they might be more inclined to do it.
Yeah, I was listening to that with BT, and I didn't hear that at the ground, but in his separate press conference with the other media, he came out with what I thought was an interesting comment. I put on Twitter, which kind of got a predictable reaction, which was, I think the supporters would have liked what they saw. 16 recoveries in the last third is proof of energy on the pitch. And I mean, you know, given the culture war at Chelsea over the last while, I think you might be overthinking it to think that's what the supporters would have liked. And we don't want to get ahead of ourselves here, but I do feel, given the fact that it's, you know, a club legend he's replacing, there is the potential for a bit of a Sarri situation and another even bigger culture war among the fan base as this continues. And it's probably why, to a certain degree, Tuchel probably needs to apply his style of football. I mean, because he can talk about it as much as he wants, but when it's actually in action, and as we saw with Dortmund, I remember seeing him when they played Spurs in the Europa League about 4 years ago, and they were great to watch. Like, I mean, for all he speaks, it's his football in action that can be really convincing. But I do think he needs to kind of enact it pretty quickly, given the kind of the context of this Chelsea situation. But it's going to be interesting. I mean, Barney Ronay did a piece yesterday where, almost by accident, Chelsea have appointed the anti-Frank Lampard, and even your own reference to kind of the intensity reflects that. I think it's completely true. I think Barney's totally right.
Is it possible in any way to get a sense of how Chelsea fans in the area feel about Lampard's departure? Like, are they very much anti his sacking, or is it impossible to know?
Well, I think maybe, I suppose it's an interesting thing. I mean, and this raises almost a philosophical question about the fan base in the modern era, particularly the COVID era, where almost social media noise has come to replace crowd noise, because that's where you get a gauge. United have just equalised.
Harry Maguire, who, by the way, has played every minute of every Premier League game since he signed. I just saw that stat tonight. He's durable, if nothing else. So that's a header from a corner, 1-1, 64 minutes on the clock. You were saying social media, yeah, it's the new crowd noise.
Yeah, that's it. Now, I suppose there was actually, I mean, a physical representation of the fans tonight where they asked for Chelsea, one of the fan groups asked for Chelsea to keep up the banner in support of Lampard, the one about trusting him forever, just as a kind of acknowledgement of everything he's done for the club. But they've also asked that it be taken down after the game out of respect for Tuchel. But, I mean, my own sense, just from talking to Chelsea fans, from seeing reactions, I'd say it's maybe not quite as emphatically pro-Lampard as you would expect because of results, but it's still hugely in his favour. And maybe there's not so much a scepticism towards Tuchel, but maybe just a kind of this distaste for the fact that one of their legends is gone. But that could easily translate into maybe some difficulty for Tuchel, as we saw with Rafa Benitez and Sarri, if he doesn't kind of get them moving quickly.
Something you may have a better feel for over there. Dan and I, McDonald, were just talking last night, and I'd said this before about Chelsea a couple of years ago, and I won't labour the point tonight because I did make the point at length last night, but I'd be curious to get your sense being over there. Like, supporting Chelsea does not look like a very enriching experience as a fan, and no manager outside of Mourinho has been given more than 2 years. So you kind of know how this is going to end before it starts. And yes, there are, you know, league successes in Conte and Jose in 15 and even Ancelotti in 10. But unlike Klopp, where you're on something of a journey and there's a sense of an era that might be 4, 5, 6 years that you can invest yourself in and associate yourself, you know, a time of your life with and go on a bit of a journey with, there's just no point getting attached to anybody at Chelsea or investing in them as a fan. It is mercenary culture at its most refined. And refined is kind of a compliment because it sort of works for them. But as a fan, I would just think this is just so hollow. And you know, the Mourinho era initially, the first one, 04 to 07, had so much going on and left such a mark that team were still Mourinho's team right the way through until they won the Champions League in 12. And that was a journey where Lampard, Terry, Drogba, the spine of that team, you were invested in, I suspect, as a fan. And as they've drifted away to be replaced by Kai Havertz and the lads, and another, you know, very polished manager to be replaced in another 18 months by another polished bilingual manager, very impressive on the merry-go-round, you just kind of wonder, what is there as a fan to really get your teeth into? But then maybe Chelsea, I don't know, maybe they're kind of happy enough knowing there'll be another league in the next 3-4 years.
Well, I mean, it's an interesting one. Also, the reference to Mourinho's first few years, because I distinctly remember, and it's probably the only time it's happened, when Abramovich sacked Mourinho the first time in September 2007, there was close to mutiny in the stands, a real anti-Abramovich feeling.
Yeah.
And it's the only time I've really seen that. There is something similar to it now, but it's nowhere near as overt. And I think obviously because of the fact Abramovich has been there much longer. And this points to the kind of the key issue here. No matter what anyone's idea of Chelsea is, and this is, we're talking about supporters who go back decades with them, ultimately the club, more than anything else, is Abramovich's club and bent to his whims and what he wants. And I suppose you can understand a certain frustration in Chelsea fans there, or maybe a disenchantment, because from everything they associate with the club, really, I suppose, I mean, ideally, what would most fans want? They obviously want to win, but they want to win with a certain style, I think, of their own, and under players or managers they love or who they feel represent the club. So for Chelsea fans, a legend like, and it's a bit like this with United at the moment in Solskjaer.
Yeah.
But for Chelsea fans, a legend like Lampard taking over, for many, this would have been the ultimate. And to succeed under Lampard would have been their own victory, maybe, or more their victory than any other. So for him to be sacked, I suppose, takes that away. And like there's almost this won't come around again, it won't be the same again. Now, I think you're right. If a new manager comes in, quickly wins the title, then all that is kind of forgotten, but not really forgotten because it's always there. And I think you're totally right in that. Chelsea have obviously benefited hugely in terms of success from the Abramovich money. Yeah, it has. I don't want to call it a curse, but it's almost an emotional curse in that. And you can actually sense there's at times like this you can sense a little bit of kind of double thinking with Chelsea fans, because you know I've seen them, I've heard them where there are times when they're absolutely lording it and they love being Abramovich's club, the Roman Empire, all the rest of it, and they really make a show of kind of like this kind of the brashness of their money. And then on the other side though, it feels like there's the sense, well, success is never truly great success because you can't get away with it. There's a similar issue with City and Abu Dhabi. There's always that lingering thing. Well, they've bought success in a much more direct way than clubs like Manchester United or Liverpool or whatever. It just means it maybe takes away that emotional, and it makes so many victories interchangeable, perhaps.
Yes, that's a good word.
Which is maybe the key to it. Whereas had they managed to do it with Lampard, there would have been a deeper emotion to it.
Yeah. Liverpool, they play tomorrow. I'm really curious to get a sense of what you're hearing. I know you've lots of contacts around the place. The disparity in analysis of what is going wrong with Liverpool is amazing. Like, nobody can pinpoint anything beyond the fact that everyone knows Van Dijk is a massive loss and then that's had ramifications. But I mean, again, we were talking about it earlier in the week. You can have Graham Souness in the Sunday Times saying Henderson, midfield, get him back in ASAP. I was listening to John Giles the other day and he was saying, like, Henderson, I'm not sure that's really their big issue. I mean, I'd take Thiago over Henderson any day of the week. You have other people pinpointing the full-backs as being crucial. You have others talking, well, it's Salah and his head's turned and the front three are all out of form, Firmino, Salah in particular. That's the big issue, not defence. And all and any of above, you know, you can make a pretty good argument for. So it's quite complicated. What are you hearing about what's going on at Liverpool? And by the way, that's not to mention Klopp's demeanour all year.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting that before Lampard was sacked this week, I'd been planning to do a piece on Liverpool's attack and, you know, this drought and the lack of goals and all, and so I'd already kind of done a bit of research into it before the Lampard situation kind of skewed all that and saw me throw it all out. But like from everyone I spoke to, it kept coming back to the same thing, which was, and this was about the attack, which was the central defence. And I suppose one, it points to how kind of cohesive that team is as a unit when they're, you know, full on it. And it does mean when you take out that link, it affects the whole thing. And it's had a particular effect on the attack. And the reason for that is basically, and I think it reflects how Van Dijk, I can't think of too many signings that were so specifically necessary for it and so specific to what a manager wanted that they just fit right. That's what Van Dijk is. And that's why his absence, and I know they've obviously lost some of their other senior centre-halves, and that's been an issue. But what Van Dijk does, what everyone at the club basically says, is that he's so commanding in that area, it essentially, and so comfortable, that it means the rest of the team, and I mean, I did this before you get into anything else, this is even a subtle psychological thing, but when he's there, the rest of the team, and that means particularly the two fullbacks and the two number 8s, they're completely confident to just bomb on. And like I remember, so one Premier League assistant manager was talking to me about 2 seasons ago. It was just after Liverpool had lost the title to City by a point, and like he was talking about how good Liverpool are, and he actually backed them to win it then. But then the real difficulty of playing Liverpool at their best is that those 4, the 2 number 8s, who would have been Fabinho and Henderson, and the 2 fullbacks, Alexander-Arnold and Robertson, they basically create this line very high up the pitch, so say 70 yards up the pitch away from their own goal, which just constantly pins you back into your own goal. And when they're on it and they're intense, there's not much you can do about it. And obviously Van Dijk allows them to play up that high. But what happens is, once they pin you in, then the ball keeps coming back and it creates chaos around the opposition box, which the 3 attackers, Salah, Firmino and Mane, obviously absolutely thrive off. So already, just without Van Dijk there, before you get into all the other manifold issues, it means Robertson and Trent Alexander-Arnold aren't quite so confident to go forward. Obviously, Henderson and Fabinho had to step back. So we're just seeing the whole kind of structure of the team just, I suppose, weakened right through, and it's had an effect on it. And the irony is, its greatest effect has been up front. But I suppose the game against Manchester United on Sunday showed the bind or dilemma that Klopp is into a certain degree, because obviously the games before that, he'd been so conscious of the defence that they hadn't been as maybe as proactive going forward, which obviously had just created this run of games where they didn't score. On Sunday against United, maybe because it was the FA Cup, they were a bit more content and a bit more willing to take risks. And they scored and created some lovely moves. 2 on Sheffield United. Oh dear, it's an own goal in effect. I mean, it was sort of going on target, but then it hit Chuanzabe and deflected in off under the crossbar. They had no chance. They had so many chances to clear this ball. I was half watching this and half listening to you. Well, sorry, I was fully listening to you. I was half watching you. But they had so many chances to clear this and just made a mess of it. And then ball fell to the edge of the area. And it was a tame shot that was not going in, but it took a wicked deflection. United 2-1 down with 74 minutes on the clock. That is now getting very, very sticky. The Maguire touch to De Gea it's just the whole move is basically just United taking these weird little touches in their own box. Yeah, they overcooked it. United. There was a point where you just have to get rid of it. Yeah. Dear oh dear. Okay. But as I was saying there, I mean, suddenly Liverpool looked much better going forward against Manchester United. We're just watching now, but it meant they were so much more susceptible on the back and so much easier to catch out. And that is something. It feels like Klopp hasn't really come close to solving that dilemma yet, which is how far he can go up the pitch that gives the attack enough and also keeps the defence safe enough. That's going to be a real problem for Klopp, I think, until he gets at least one senior centre-half back, but really until Van Dijk comes back. Now, in that sense, I do wonder whether Tottenham could actually be almost the perfect opposition to play tomorrow, because just the way Mourinho sets up in these games, I mean, he forces you to play a certain way because he'll only play one way, which will be keeping it tight at the back and countering. And a final word on Klopp then and his general demeanour. I think there's a temptation to read too much into his abruptness at the moment and the Sean Dyche clash, for instance, because he's just a sore loser. And he always has been. Remember they when City beat them 4-0 last July, everything's rosy. Okay, you've lost to City, and Jeff Shreves was asking about it, and the interview just turned on a sixpence and got really awkward, and he was like, I don't understand the question, and kind of aggressive with Shreves. And so, there was no sign of trouble then. That's just the way he is. So I don't read much into the fact that he's in cranky mood
right now with regard to his future at Liverpool. I just think he's in a cranky mood because things are tough at the moment.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, the personality of managers, obviously, because we spend so much time in press conferences and that, it's something that we, as journalists and with friends who are journalists, we talk about a fair bit. And a line we always have is to be a top manager, you've probably got to have sort of like a distinctive type of personality, which isn't the type of personality that maybe I suppose you have to be a top manager. You've got to be a genius, really, which comes with a lot of idiosyncrasies. Well, Klopp is probably, I would say, the closest to a quote-unquote normal person within top managers that I can think of. But of course, he has his own idiosyncrasies. And one of those is that he takes losing things going against him very badly and always has. I mean, I remember even in his first 2 years at Liverpool, it was an issue then much more as well. This is when, he was on the upward curve. He was beginning to get things right. But, setbacks would still affect him. And in those days, well, it still would be the case if it wasn't for COVID. If they have a Saturday game, say, there's always a separate huddle for the daily newspapers for quotes to come out on Monday morning or Sunday evening. So, like, the papers get their own thing. But it's often a bit more intimate with a manager, and you get a better sense of him because, the cameras are off, you're in a kind of a room to the side, and he's just talking to a few people. But I remember in those, like, he could be, say there's about 5 or 6 journalists around him. He's had a bad day, and he can go really, really ratty about it, and just over little things. And I remember, although one time I better not name the journalist, just, I suppose, because it's his story really. But in one of these situations, Klopp, there was a little bit of an argument starting between Klopp and a few journalists. But then one of them said something he liked, and Klopp just turned around and gave him a hug. So, thank you.
Very good. Listen, we're out of time. I plan to talk to you about David Moyes for a couple of minutes. Let's I'll put a pin in that and do that again because, geez, he's turned things around very nicely. But for the time being, I'll let you watch the last 15 minutes of this, Miguel. Thanks a mil. Appreciate it.
Cheers, Joe. Thank you.
Cheers. Miguel Delaney there from the London Independent. Still, Man United 1, Sheffield United 2, 78 minutes on the clock.
Football on Off the Ball
with Paddy Power. New normal, same old football. Paddy Power. Gamble responsibly. Gamblingcare.ie.
Zero. It gets a bad rep. Like when people say they have zero interest in something. Well, if you're thinking of buying an electric car this year, you'll find this interesting because at Nissan we see the power of zero. Introducing the Nissan Leaf Power of Zero offer. Buy a brand new 100% electric zero-emissions Nissan Leaf and get 1 year's free servicing, a free home charger, the lowest electric finance offer on the market, and great savings on running costs. Now that's the power of zero. Find out more at nissan.ie.
Shop online with Harvey Norman for big deals on appliances, technology, furniture and bedding. Save €270 on a Samsung frost-free fridge freezer, now just $499. Or get the Akai 32-inch Android TV, now only $199, saving €50. And at Harvey Norman, we're matching all competitors' prices, even their sale prices, so why shop anywhere else? Shop online at harveynorman.ie or safely in our spacious stores, open until 6 p.m. daily for home appliances and essential technology.
Go! Are your employees working remotely but struggling with unreliable phone and collaboration tools? Take a free trial of Avaya Cloud Office by RingCentral at cloudoffice.ie.
Football on Off the Ball
with Paddy Power. Gamble responsibly. Gamblingcare.ie.
Dave McGoldrick been taken off at Old Trafford. Big hug from Chris Wilder. He's run a lot tonight, Dave McGoldrick. Had that offside chance and had one nice effort with the outside of his boot in a very cultured Dave McGoldrick way. So his night is done. 80 minutes on the clock. Still Manchester United 1, Sheffield United 2. It's just... for all the good work Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has done over the last 2 months and for the winning run to end like this will be a sickener. They have Arsenal at the weekend. For Sheffield United, I mean, it's unbelievable. Bottom of the table, this will move them up to within 3 points of West Brom. They're still a good bit off Brighton in 17th, but it's something, that's for sure. It's a bonus 3 points if they hang on. 80 minutes on the clock. Elsewhere this evening, Leicester have equalised against Everton. I told you James had put Everton 1-0 up. That was on 30 minutes in that game. But Yuri Tielemans has equalised for Leicester on the 67th minute. And again, like at Old Trafford, there's about 9 minutes to go in that game at Goodison. The full times from this evening, if you missed them earlier, it was a 0-0 draw between Brighton and Fulham. As we were discussing with Miguel Delaney, it was also a 0-0 draw between Chelsea and Wolves. And then I guess game of the day in some ways was Burnley 3, Aston Villa 2. They've really found some form, Burnley, not least at Anfield the other evening. And now that win moves them up to 15th, and suddenly they're 8 points above the drop zone, which is very nice indeed for Sean Dyche and for Burnley. That's pretty much us done. You can download all of tonight's show with Ronan O'Gara on Wednesday Night Rugby, amongst other things, in all the usual places, wherever you get your podcasts, and our social channels as well. We'll have all the content on YouTube or beyond. And you can get the OTB Sports app, which is free and in your app store and has all our stuff if you haven't downloaded it yet. Tomorrow morning, OTB AM coming at you as usual, 7:30. It's our breakfast show here in Off the Ball. Daniel Harris due to react to the game at Old Trafford. I suspect that conversation has become more interesting than the lads had thought. Deal or No Deal, and then Sue Murphy on what to watch on TV over the next week. And then tomorrow evening, John Giles, of course, back with us, much to discuss. Liverpool Spurs tomorrow evening as well. And our grassroots sport series continues. So tomorrow the focus is going to be on rugby, and we are very happy to say Stuart Lancaster is going to be talking to us about the talent development programmes here in Ireland, how it all works, the role of the schools, obviously, I'm sure, a big part of it in Leinster. So Stuart Lancaster, always really thoughtful guest, is going to be on tomorrow. And then, very happy to say as well, Johnny Sexton, rugby fans, is with us on Friday, looking ahead to the Six Nations and having a good chat about the year that has been. So lots to look forward to. In the meantime, Tom Dunn is on the way next.